This is an ongoing discussion of a custom terrain project recreating the Battle of Raab in Austria. Production is being done by Terranscapes. For more information on how Terranscapes can do custom wargaming terrain for you, visit Terranscapes.com. So this is the final stage prior to painting the boards, and I wanted to give a final look over before applying paint to them, as some modifications could be made at this time if needed. And I wanted to address a couple of the concerns that the customer had regarding a few points of development. So first I'll just point out some of the things that I wanted to highlight before continuing. One was that when I was reviewing the plans on the map of the original layout, I noticed that this section here of the road, now the roads here you can see stand out slightly. It's difficult with this contrast and at this stage of development to see all the detail, but this is done with a very finer sand, so this will have a much smoother appearance than the surrounding areas, reflecting a sort of dusty, trampled down look. I did not put in wheel ruts, however, or grooving to the surface, primarily because I'm still concerned with the scale, and I didn't want to provide wheel tracks that would be out of scale with the models. And so I think it's a much safer go to go with a flatter surface for these, so they'll have a dusty, worn down look. And as it crosses the stream here on the map, it indicated that there was to be a gravelly fording area where people walk through, and that is provided here. Of course, the resolution on YouTube is a little bit grainy, so I hope that shows up well. My plan, excuse me, is to model the areas coming out of the ford as being muddy terrain, and so they'll look damp and a little bit more uneven than the rest of the path, showing sort of the mud being tracked out of the river as it goes. Of course, the river will be filled at least a quarter inch to nearly a half an inch deep, so the water will come up just over this area, and it'll be visible through the water resin. The other thing I wanted to point out was the trees have been tree bases have been inserted. Now the tree bases line the swamp area here, as was originally described, and they're mounted in such a way that when the trees are inserted, the trees will stand upright, which is of course how trees actually grow. So they're not just sitting flat on the slope. They are actually mounted at a slight angle and then backfilled underneath and carved into the substrate. The other thing that I wanted to mention regards the trees that are around the hill on the swamp side of the major hill. Taking a look at this hill, I noticed when I asked you, excuse me, how far out the trees could go, you only really wanted to see them extend an inch or two away from the base of the hill, and so that actually makes it a little bit crowded on the hill for all of the trees. We originally discussed about 20 trees on this spot, and I think I'm somewhere around 15 or so, ballparkish. So I kept the tree count down just a little bit because I didn't want to overcrowd the trees and make it really unfeasible to even place the trees there, or to have troops placed amongst them. And so my plan is to take a few of the live trees that were slated to go here, actually, and to place them instead around, interspersed amongst the dead trees around the swamp, which I think actually will look a little bit more realistic than my original plan of only having dead trees around the swamp. So the amount of live trees the count will probably be the same, and then we'll just move a couple of them over to the swamp. The items that you mentioned recently were moving the hill to the town side of the road, which I've done. Prior to this, the hill was mounted somewhere around here, so I swung the road up slightly so that I could place the hill just a little bit more towards the top of the board. Well, as I've been viewing it, away from the river, that is up toward this way, so that there's a little bit more space between the hill and the river, allowing maybe for a building to kind of sneak in here. You did mention in your recent email, however, that there was a small chapel on top of the small hill. Again, I I had already finished sanding and sealing down the board at that time, so it's a little rounded to put any kind of a structure on it at this point. I don't know if you can see the curvature of it, but my secondary concern, actually I should say my primary concern with that though, is the size of the hill as it would relate to a structure on top of it. We originally discussed a hill that would be 3 inches by 5 inches. This hill is actually twice that size. This hill is about 6 by 10 or so, and even at that size, it's really too small to place any kind of real structure on top of it, because you have to consider you're only going to have the top, say, 30% of the footprint that would be level enough to actually place a structure on it, and then you're only looking at a few square inches, and I don't know what kind of a structure you could place on there. An option, if you wanted to represent a sort of religious theme, might be to place a small shrine on top to symbolize the church. If that's something that you feel strongly about, I can regrind this down with a sander and flatten this slightly and then resurface it, and we could then be able to place a small structure on there. I'm a little hesitant to do that just because I'm not sure how the foam dust that's going to be created by that is going to intermix with all of the sand and get stuck in there. It may not show at all actually when it gets painted. When I prime the boards, they'll be primed in a heavy black latex paint, which is a very strong seal. But anyway, it's something I haven't done before, and so I'm a little reluctant at this stage to try something radically new, but if you felt like you wanted to take a shot at it, I'd be willing to support that. And the other thing that you mentioned was the road that was to the swamp side of the hill. So here we have the hill and of course the swamp for people who might be viewing this who aren't familiar with the project. Swamp is over in that corner, and that this road section here was to be a ditch. And again, I had already finished the layout of the roads and sanded them prior to receiving your email, and so it could be altered at this stage, but I prefer not to if at all possible. An option for texturing this, I thought, would be to place a lot of upright small grasses, etc., in amongst this road piece here to make it look unused, perhaps infrequently worn, and being overgrown, and so that might help to kind of model this idea of a ditch that was maybe traversable but isn't used very frequently, and have that sort of bleed into the regular roadway that you see here. So just to give another quick look, I think the contrast in this lighting is very poor though, but you can see the roadway that's in here coming along, wrapping on the north side, well, the way I view it as north, this side of the hill, and coming down off the board here, and then traveling as a fork down across the ford, and then coming across, and then the road at the southern end following the bottom of the boards, which would later connect to the other boards that have yet to be created. So that's an update of where this stands and a few of the issues that I had. I'll send you an email, of course, letting you know if this is posted, and at that time you can let me know if there's any really radical changes that we need to consider, and if that's not, if there aren't any, then I'll proceed with painting the boards, and they'll move along quite quickly. The only thing that will take a little bit of time from this point will be pouring the rivers. Because the river depth is going to be deeper than is typically recommended for pouring those resins, I'll be pouring the resins in stages. They'll be poured actually in 3 levels, probably at least 3 levels or maybe 4. And actually doing a little research on waterways and dioramas, I've come across some interesting suggestions about sequential tinting of the water, and I know that you wanted the base to look muddy and to be relatively clear, but very, very faint tints in the water will still allow you to see clearly through it, but I think will help impart a really nice illusion of depth as the water gets a little murkier as it goes down deeper. Typically, waters that are not moving very, very fast and are near a lot of vegetation typically pick up a a lot of yellows and browns in them, mostly as a result of tannins from leaves that have fallen in and are decaying. So my plan is to have that have a slightly, see if I can pan back here, the very slightly brownish tint at the very bottom layers, and then as it approaches the swamp, to have these bleed, and I'll do a little blending here, and blend into a greenish, more algae-filled tints at the bottom levels in the swampish marsh area here. So again, that's an update on the board set as it stands, and I look forward to hearing from you.